So, the first thing I want to do is, today's just going to be different than it normally is. I hope you're okay with that. I hope you're with me. I know y'all love me. So, I want to tell you about my trip, and I don't want to just tell you about what I saw. I want to tell you about what happened inside of me. And I'm about to be really vulnerable. And any of you that came to my conference last year know that I believe in vulnerability and that I know that vulnerability bears fruit. So some of you might feel uncomfortable with the level of transparency that I'm about to unleash on you. I'm going to ask you to get your seatbelt on and just go with it, okay? So anyway, it's okay. Vulnerability, transparency, all those things are beautiful. It's okay. And the truth sets us free. So I want to tell you about what happened about a month before I went on my trip. I began to pray and ask the Lord to help me deal with the addiction of food in my life. And I just said to him, Papa, I'm totally out of control. You know this. I just sit in front of the TV and just snack all night long. I'm out of control. I'm almost at the highest weight that I've ever been at. And I was asking him to find a way to help me break that addiction off of me, release me from that bondage, get those chains off of me. So for about 10 days before my trip, he said to me, "Don't forget about tapping." And I went, "Oh, that's right." He had told me about the emotional freedom technique called tapping several years ago, and I looked into it, and I was like, yeah, that's cool, whatever, But I ordered a book. I watched a bunch of videos on YouTube, which if any of you are interested, all you have to do is go to Google and type in emotional freedom technique tapping. And I bought a book by Jessica Ortner. She and her husband are really kind of some of the people that are really big into it on YouTube, and you can learn all about it. What I'm talking about today is not about tapping. It's about that the Lord gave that to me to help me. Because essentially what it does is it rewires your brain as you tap on these, pressure points in your body, okay? So he told me to do the tapping, and then he told me to fast every other day while I was on my trip for the entire day and into the night. In other words, don't eat anything for 24 hours every other day. And I said to him, Papa, you know I can't do that. I have never been able to do that. I've never been good at fasting. Here's my history of fasting, y'all. I'm going to fast today. And around 2 o'clock, I just cave. Can't do it. So, but he said to me to do it. And so I thought, okay, I'll try. So, between the tapping and prayer, it happened. I was able to do it. The first day that I left here, I didn't have any breakfast. I just had coffee. I didn't eat breakfast. I didn't eat lunch. I had some grumbling in my tummy. Between lunch and dinner, around 6 o'clock, my stomach gave up. You know how that happens. It gives up with the hunger pangs. It goes, oh, I'm not getting anything. That night, the first night sleeping in my van on this trip, I could not get to sleep because I am so used to using food as a sleeping pill. But I just said, no, this is what he told me to do. His grace is sufficient. I had tapped several times during the day, and I did it. And I did it out of the 14 days on my trip, I did it 7 days. And on day 3 of the trip, I said to the Lord, there haven't been any ministry appointments, any God appointments yet, and it's day 3. What's going on? And he said to me, this isn't going to be that kind of a trip. I said, okay, what's it going to be? And he said to me, this is going to be your pilgrimage back to yourself. You've lost yourself. You've lost who you are. And as soon as he said it, y'all, I knew exactly what he meant. I've had so much pain and trauma in the last couple of years that I've lost my joy. So I used to be this ridiculously happy person that was filled with laughter and joy, and I brought the joy wherever I went, and I just haven't been like that recently, So I understood what he was telling me. Now, I had always heard that fasting brought you closer to the Lord. I had heard from other people, and I took them at their word, but I experienced it for the first time. And I'm not exactly sure what happens with it. It may be that you're so hungry in your flesh that it kind of forces you to seek Jesus, the bread of life, to fill you up in your emptiness. It's a supernatural thing. I'm sure it's a supernatural thing somehow. But once you get past the misery of the stomach hunger pangs or whatever, something gets opened up inside of you, or maybe something gets broken off of you. I don't know how to explain it, but something happens. So it's hard to explain it unless you've experienced it, So another thing that happened to me, because I had put the food down as an addictive substance that I had been using to numb my pain, all my emotions came to the surface. And I had experienced this once before with alcohol. When I put the alcohol down finally 30 years ago, all of a sudden I was feeling all this stuff, and that's what happened when I put the food down for 24 hours at a time. I was like, I cried. I cried a lot. This is my road trip. I left Charleston, went up to Lexington, Kentucky. Then I went to Churchill Downs in Louisville. Then I went up to some small towns in northern Illinois and Wisconsin, went to the Wisconsin Dells. And then I left that area and I went straight across to South Dakota all in one day to pee. And y'all, I literally cried my way west across South Dakota. I was in my van I put on this song called The Song Remembers When by Trisha Yearwood, which is the saddest song you ever heard in your life. And it just set me off to crying, and I was crying and crying and crying. When I reached maybe about this river, I said to the Lord, what's going on? And he said to me, Peggy, you have a lot of ungrieved losses in your life. You haven't taken time to grieve them. And I went, oh, so it's okay? I'm not depressed? He said, no, you're not depressed. So after I went to the Black Hills and Mount Rushmore, which was amazing and awesome, I went up to Theodore Roosevelt National Park in North Dakota, right there. And then I headed east, and I cried my way east across North Dakota. And I know you're thinking, boy, Peggy, that's a lot of crying. Did you really enjoy this vacation? Yes, I did. Because I needed to be alone so that I could grieve and cry. And I didn't know it until I got there, So I began to think about all the relationships that I have had in the last 2 years that have ended. Relationships with Christian women that I loved. I'm going to read you their names. Kathy, Tricia, Rhoda, Laura, Jody, Kathy, another Kathy, Lauren, Jill, Susan. 9 women that for one reason or another have chosen to end their relationship with me. Now I know you all are sitting there and you're thinking, well, it's something wrong with you, Peggy. And I asked the Lord that. I did. I said, Papa, is it me? Is it me? And he said, no, honey, it's because you cling to the word. And they don't want to be that strict with the word of God in their life. You're a teacher and you're called to a higher authority and a standard. And I said, but it hurts. It hurts, Papa, to have these beautiful Christian women reject me and leave me. And he said, I know. It's a test. It's a test you have to pass. In my case, it's for ministry. I don't know if all of you know this, but I got ordained about 2 days before I left. Yay. So the Lord showed me that I hadn't grieved even the first, Kathy Noel, which was my best friend for 15 years. And so what happened was that there were so many rejections in such a quick period of time that it was like a traffic jam in my brain.
Your last chance. With one piece of candy, get past you and into the packing room unwrapped. You're fired.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello!
Oh, this is easier. Yeah, we can handle this, okay? Listen, Ethel, I think this... I think we're fighting a losing game. Here she comes.
Fine, you're doing splendidly. Speed it up! Oh!
Okay, so you get why I showed you that clip, right? Like the rejection. It's hilarious. In real life, what happened to me was not hilarious. It was extremely painful. And it just kept happening and happening. It happened so fast that I couldn't wrap my head around the first rejection before the next one came, you know? So I just couldn't keep up. So after I cried a lot going across the Dakotas, the Lord began to connect these dots with me and told me that I was dealing with rejection and the orphan mentality, which I know some of you already know something about. I don't know, you know, it's at the top of your, you know, your title on your paper. And I said, okay, Lord. He had told me to study the orphan mentality last month, or the month that I talked to you about it, remember? And I had studied it quite a bit, but now I went back again. And I studied it from the perspective of having been through it. And so, you know, I cried and cried and cried until I hit Red Wing, Minnesota on my way back. A great little town. I was driving into Red Wing. The sky was blue. The clouds were all puffy white. There were beautiful farms on either side. And I just felt, it's all going to be okay. And something lifted. I don't know how to explain it, but something lifted. And I feel like I called my husband and I said, get ready. When I come home, you're going to have your old wife back. And he went, yay. So, once that thing lifted, that's when the ministry finally began. The last 2 days of the trip. So I'm going to tell you the first God story was in a little gift shop in Red Wing, Minnesota called Plum Crazy. And I was standing right there. And I heard this woman say, the doctor doesn't know what to do with me. Even the dermatologist is so frustrated. She doesn't know, everything she's tried isn't working. And I went, you know when the Lord rings your bell? Have you ever had the Lord ring your bell? The Lord rang my bell, and I walked over to her and I said, can I see? I'm a doctor. And she and the 3 women with her came walking over very quickly to see what was going to happen. She said, it's my hands. I said, I don't know what you've been told, but I'm going to tell you exactly what this is. Are you ready? And I looked her right in the eye. yes. I said, your liver is overloaded. Your liver is taxed. You need lemon oil. And I told her about the lemon oil cure, which if anybody's watching this, you want to know what the lemon oil cure is, you can always text me. But every day for 12 days, you take a lemon, you roll it on the counter to release the oil from the rind. You cut the lemon in half, put it in 8 ounces of warm water. Then you put the lemon in and you let it soak to leach all the oil out of the rind. You let it sit for about a minute, and then you down that water like a shot so you can shock your liver into releasing all the garbage and mud that's in there. And I said, and you're going to get worse before you get better. You're going to think I'm crazy, but I've told this to many people in my career as a chiropractor. People with migraines, everything. And lemons help the liver to do its job better. And she went, oh my gosh. Every time I get my blood work done, my liver enzymes are high and my doctor doesn't know why. I said, yes, honey. You need lemon. Your liver is absolutely overwhelmed with toxins. She went, I'm so glad I met you. And you want to come to lunch with us? And I said, no, I'm fasting. I can't. And then she said to me, you know, I'm supposedly allergic to lemon. I said, sweetheart, you're not allergic to lemon. I said, tell me why you think you're allergic to lemon. And she said, well, in an effort to figure out what was going on with my skin, because it looked like eczema, cracking palms, you know, they sent me to an allergist to see if it was allergic. And the allergist came up with 14 things that I was allergic to. And I said, do you have reactions when you eat any of those things? She goes, no. I said, those are not allergies. I'm telling you, your liver is taxed. Just do what I'm asking you to do, and you will get better. And I said, let's pray. And we prayed. And she said, she hugged me, and she said, I'm so glad I met you. Like, I love God appointments with strangers. You know, it's awesome. So that was the first God appointment. The second God appointment was with Joan. And I had the presence of mind to remember to take a photograph afterwards. I went for breakfast, and she was my waitress. And I said to her, I can go anywhere I want. What 2 towns should I hit before I have to be in Illinois by 4 o'clock today at my friend's house? She said, oh, you got to go to Platteville and one other one. So I went to both of them, and I was in Platteville at this grotto shrine. And this was 1/15 of what was there. Now you have to understand, this thing was 30 feet in the air probably. And I'm standing down behind the green leaves. And I hear, oh, it's you! And I turned around. And there's Joan. Not in Platteville, but the town adjacent to Platteville, an hour away from where she lived, from where she served me breakfast. That's when I went, oh, Papa, I missed it the first time, didn't I? Sorry. Okay. So I said to her, come here, honey. And I call everybody honey and sweetie and baby because I want them to know that I come with love. You know what I mean? I said, tell me something. What do you need prayer for in any way whatsoever? She opened up her heart and she said to me, I can't believe I'm going to tell you all this stuff, but my mother died 5 years ago, and she tells me this story. She's stuck in grief. She's crying every day. And I said to her, okay. I'm going to tell you my story of how I didn't grieve my father's death and I drank instead. And when I was finished with the story, I looked at her and said, Joan, sweetheart, is there any possibility that you are drinking or using work as an escape from really, truly entering into your grief? And she went like this. She was so overwhelmed that God told me that she didn't know what to say. So I talked to her, I ministered to her, and I prayed together, and she hugged me for like a full minute and said, I can't believe I told you all that stuff. You're a perfect stranger. But, it was a God appointment, So here's the point that I'm making. Do you see the progression of things on my trip? God had to do some revealing and healing. Then I was ready to do his work, So that's Joan. And you can't see it now, but she was wearing this, like, Star-Spangled Banner, like red, white, and blue with stars jumpsuit. It was so cool. So anyway, so all that to say that I want to talk about rejection today because that's what I walked through. I believe, and many other mental health professionals and preachers, I have heard them say that rejection is the most painful wound that a human being can encounter. Mother Teresa said it like this: the greatest disease in the West today is not TB or leprosy. It's being unwanted, unloved, and uncared for. We can cure physical diseases with medicine, but the only cure for loneliness, despair, and hopelessness is love. So an orphan heart, here are some of the characteristics, and I put this on your paper so you don't have to struggle to take notes, you know? So here it is. It's a state of mind. Now, a lot of people call it a spirit of rejection, the orphan spirit. I want you to call it whatever you want it to be. You can call it a mentality, you can call it a mindset, you can call it a demonic spirit. Whatever you want, I don't care. Let's just deal with it, you know? So, it's a state of mind characterized by feelings of abandonment, rejection, loneliness, lack of belonging. It can also manifest in defensive, critical, and secretive attitudes, such as reluctance to celebrate others due to a longing for identity and affirmation, born from a lack of confidence and security. So when you're insecure, you can't walk in the love that God has for us to celebrate the good things that happen to others, because what we're doing is we're just thinking about ourselves, and we can't be happy for others, okay? So, many people in the Bible got rejected. These are just 8 of them, and I left blanks so that you could help me fill them in. This is like a little Bible literacy test, and some of you guys know the word, so I'm expecting that you'll know who was sold into slavery by his brothers. Joseph. Yeah, ma'am. Can you imagine your sibling knocking on your door and dragging you into her car and saying, "I'm taking you down to the slave house"? See, here's the thing about the Bible. It's black and white words on a paper, but these things actually happened. You have to put yourself in that position to imagine how Joseph felt. It had to be extremely painful. So, number 2, God rejected his vegetarian gift because God likes meat.
Daniel. There's Cain.
Cain.
Okay.
Cain, yep. Because Cain grew the produce of the land, right? And Abel, slaughtered meat for the Lord, and God chose the meat. God likes meat. He likes barbecue, And so everyone goes, "Oh, Cain was such a jerk. He killed Abel." But can you imagine how he felt when he put just as much work into growing those crops as Abel? And for whatever reason, God said, "I don't like what you got. I want what he got." When you come to the potluck and you make a homemade dish and nobody eats a bite, how would you feel? Number 3, he killed an Egyptian in a fit of rage and was rejected by his people. And then he fled to Midian, thinking his life was in ruins. And yet, God had other plans. Moses, and turned this fugitive into a deliverer. So Moses' story is a testament that rejection can sometimes be redirection. When I took a look at the 9 women that had rejected me in the past 2 years, I saw what the Lord had done. He was preparing me. And he's doing the same for all of you, I promise you. Because there's nothing new under the sun, and God's character is the same when he deals with every single person. Number 4, shepherd boy turned king. We all know who that is, right? David. He knew all about rejection. Who rejected him? King Saul came after him with no good cause, except for jealousy that he'd been anointed king, the next king. Saul was green with envy, had him on the run for years. But amidst danger and rejection, David's faith and future as a king were solidified. So what I think that David's story shows is that rejection can really refine us. Because later on in David's story, He has the opportunity to kill Saul's first in command, Ishbosheth. You know the guy, Ishbosheth, or whatever the heck his name is? And somebody else in David's army did it, and he got mad at that guy. David understood touch not mine anointed. He understood that, you know. So, number 5, Sarah's servant and her son Ishmael were cast out of the desert at Sarah's demand. Does anybody remember her name? Hagar. Yep, Hagar. So despite their desperate situation, God heard their cries. They were sitting under some kind of a tree, remember? And she called out to God, and God answered, you know. And what happened was a great nation was made out of Hagar's people. I mean, it's not good what's happening now, but see, this is what I think. If you don't even look at what happened with the Muslims later, if you just look in that moment, this woman who got rejected by the competing wife, Sarah, she went out alone in the desert, in the wilderness, and called out to God, and guess what? He answered. When you're alone and you're in your wilderness and you call out to God, guess what? He's there listening. He's there to help. I mean, we are never out of sight of God's compassion for us. There is no such thing as something that you've done that's too much. God will have compassion and forgive. All right, so number 6, who was it that felt rejected by God after losing her husband and sons in Moab, and then her daughter-in-law Ruth stayed with her? Naomi, yep. Stayed by her side, leading to unexpected blessings. So this is what I get from Naomi's story. Even when we feel like God has rejected us, in her case by taking her husband and son, He may be setting the scene for unexpected blessings. When your husband leaves you in the middle of blah, blah, blah. Now look. You know, like things can happen. Things can change. Number 7, this woman was unable to have children, faced constant ridicule from Peninnah, and in her distress she prayed fervently, and God answered, giving her a son named Samuel. Who was that? Hannah. Very good. Samuel became a great prophet.
She didn't just pray in Samuel. She prayed in Jesus too. So.
Yep, her story teaches us that human rejection doesn't limit God's blessings. Right? That's kind of what I came to on my trip. All this rejection was from humans, and some of it came through the enemy. But God never rejected me. Number 8, who faced rejection from his own people for his prophecies? He was called the weeping prophet. Anybody know who the weeping prophet was? Jeremiah, good. So despite his lonesome plight, he clung to his faith. So this is what I take from Jeremiah, because I have had several friends call me Jeremiah through the years. Staying true to God's message, no matter what the cost, is worth it. It's worth it. Face rejection and come through it, and God will bless you. I believe that. I believe that's right in the Sermon on the Mount. Blessed are men when they persecute you and come against you, for great is your reward in heaven, right? Okay, so let's talk about some examples of modern day rejection. Not biblical, but now. I was always one of the last kids picked for dodgeball, one of the last kids picked for softball, whatever, in PE. I just got to the point where I expected it, you know. I was not super athletic, and everybody knew it, you know, and that picking teams thing is really harsh. They don't do it like that anymore. I remember one time when I went to interview at Williamsburg Technical College in Kingstree, South Carolina. I went to interview for a job. The big board table with all the men in suits. Listen, that's intimidating. Have you all ever done that? It's terrifying. And I gave the best information talk about myself of my life, and I still didn't get the job. I was mad, but I look back now and go, thank you, Lord. Sometimes rejection is God's protection. He's got something more in mind, you know. When you get unfriended on social media, I had a vegan friend that that unfriended me because I posted a cartoon of Jesus talking to a pig saying, "Sorry guys, pork is back on the menu." And she got so mad about that, she unfriended me. You know, like stupid little stuff like that, right? Bullying. Any of you ever bullied in school? I was, you know. When your parent leaves the family for no apparent reason, that's a huge rejection for a child. When your boyfriend breaks up with you, if no one listens when you talk. Sometimes we have family dinners and everybody's talking, and then when I speak up, they're all talking to each other instead of listening to me. This happens all the time. When a friend or loved one betrays you, cheats on you, abuses you verbally or physically, anything. When a loved one chooses a substance or a habit that they have over you and their love for you, your little old mind in there interprets that as a rejection. So here are some signs of the rejection mentality. And I just put this for you because I want you, if you ever encounter someone that you know is going through this, I want you to be able to go through your papers and say, "Where's that thing Peggy gave me?" And hand it to them and say, "This will help you." You know, feeling not good enough. I think every human being to a certain extent struggles with feeling not good enough. But when it becomes a thing, you know, then it can come from that rejection mentality. Being withdrawn, isolated, or disconnected from people. You know, when people hurt you enough, you will withdraw. It's self-survival. Seeking approval or people-pleasing. I mean, I think we all want others around us to be happy, but when it becomes a thing, it's usually because you've been rejected for not pleasing someone. And so you're walking that out in your life. Okay? If you're very busy trying to prove yourself, I did this a lot when I first got born again and learned the Bible. I went around telling everybody, proving to them how much I knew about the Bible. And you know what? The more I learned about the Bible, the less I had to prove what I knew. You know? Feeling like an outsider. I've even felt like that at church sometimes, y'all. I know that church is always supposed to be the safe place where you feel a sense of belonging, but it isn't always. That thought that no one understands me, maybe something's wrong with me, I'm different, maybe that's why they're rejecting me, you know. If you won't let others in, that intimacy issue, like, no, been there, done that, I'm going to keep you at a distance. Arm's length, please. And so we give this message to the world. Come here, but not too close, you know. Perform, work hard, and achieve to be accepted. I grew up in a family where the higher your grades were, the more money you got at report card time. And the report card was put on the fridge for everyone who came to the house to see what my grades were. So if you struggle to find your own purpose or your own identity in your life, sometimes it can come from being rejected. Every single person gets rejected. You're not going to get through this world without being rejected. So now that we know what the problem is, we've got to access the solution. You know, while I've been studying rejection, I found a lot of preachers preaching on the problem. But they never brought you to the solution. We're not going to do that today. We're going to push on through to the solution today, okay? And we are going to take that weed of rejection and the orphan spirit, and we're going to pull it out by the roots, okay? So, let's start with what the Word says about it. We're just going to read through these really quickly, okay? Malachi says, "See, I will send the prophet Elijah before the great and dreadful day of the Lord comes. He will turn the hearts of the parents to their children and the hearts of the children to their parents. Or else I will come and strike the land with total destruction." Do you understand from reading that scripture that that means that the hearts of the children of and the parents are at this moment separated from one another? That this is the way of the world. So God has a solution for that. Romans 8, "For those who are led by the Spirit of God are" what? Children of God. So, Beth, will you follow me?